Well, you can tell we've been doing a lot of work. Whatever that was Bernard said, my title's already changed. So year ones. Hi everyone, and I'm really happy to be here and just to recognize Simon, who's been plugging along with me for the literature review process for the last couple months. So it's really been honing in with research that I'm doing. So just for a introduction for those of you that don't know me, I live in Beauval. I've lived there my whole life, and when I was a kid, there was the residential school was in full blast. So I attended school there, and even with all of the negative impacts, there is a positive advantage to that today, and that's have attended the school. I have lifelong friends that are still living in the north, and they're leaders now. So in the work that I do, that's really important to have a relationship of trust with leadership. And as you can see, my specialty has been in grief and trauma. Even though I started out with education, I was a teacher for 10 years. And then I did some consultant work with the school division, which was really specializing with crisis response and suicide intervention. And about 4 years ago, I left that job, and now I'm working even more closely with the work that's passionate for me, and that's with youth. And our company is called White Lightning Consulting. So if we just look at the rates of suicide, I know most of you are probably familiar with what's been happening in the north, but we have a lot of factors, and that's something that I'll be delving into more with my research. But there's some of the factors that are facing our communities, living in poverty. But the one that I'm kind of focusing closer into with my research is intergenerational trauma and disconnection from culture. Deaths by suicide. If you just look at the North Sask, North Male is the red, just comparing it to the rest of Canada. It's just a quick picture of what we see happening. And when we teach about suicide intervention in our training, it's not just the completed suicides that we're worried about. It's what's going on even before that or after attempts. So we're seeing this as female now when you look at the number of females, and that probably now has, we have now 8 and 9-year-olds doing a lot of self-harm. So that kind of gives us a quick picture of what's happening. So the definition is that our communities in the north, especially in northern Saskatchewan, and now you see it happening across Canada, is we are experiencing tremendous loss. And it seems to be coming in pockets. You think you're okay for a while, and then it comes back again. So with the recent research now, I'll be getting into that in a little bit, but just understanding how intergenerational grief works. Like, what does that even look like linked to residential schools? So why are kids, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids now feeling the impact that their great-grandparents have gone through when they haven't even attended? So how does that work? So that's one definition of the problem, and the next one is just access to quality care for our young people. A lot of our mental health is geared towards adult care. So it's really, really, really limited for youth. So my research is asking, what alternative modes of mental health treatment resonate with Indigenous communities in northern Saskatchewan? And how does such a model honor Indigenous cultures and practices to to promote, enhance, and build capacity to heal for these northern communities. Oh, I think I skipped. So in my literature review, I've kind of been focusing on five areas. The first one is a ceremonial calendar. A lot of people have heard about the medicine wheel, but our team was saying, oh, you know what, that's kind of overused. Everybody uses that. And it's a flat model on a piece of paper. So we were talking more about process. That's what we want to focus on, is the process that's going on, the approach, what happens before an intervention even, and what's going on after, and what's happening even in the middle of the transformation. So we thought that a ceremonial calendar that's based on our local area would be something important for us to develop. So using that as the framework. Number 2 is the inside-out process. I've talked about a hockey rink analogy where we need to clean the ice from the inside out. Because if we do it the other way, and a lot of our organizations, that's what they're doing, is they're pushing the snow back into the middle and leaving communities with all this, you know, then we have to pick up the shovels and do it all over again, and it's twice the work. So using that kind of a process, which builds capacity. And then the use of 4 frame models to facilitate self, community, and systemic change. 4 is the barriers. It's important for us to recognize what we're up against. Even though they might be in our face all the time, we still need to define those and figure out ways that we can provide change. And the 5th one, self as learner. Always staying grounded as a researcher and knowing where I am in my place as a community member, because I'm from this area, so there's a lot of sensitive things that we have to watch with ethics and making sure I'm staying objective with that. Mixed methods is going to be, I know it's going to probably be more like multi-mixed methods, but I'm still working on this, and thank you to Jagris. It's an awesome class. Really, I lean, sorry Bernard, but I'm leaning more towards qualitative, but it's just because of the Indigenous theory that I'm doing. Sometimes, you know, we need to use numbers with qualitative and quantitative. I'm still trying to figure that out, but the main one that we're using is Indigenous research methods, and what fits into that is the collaborative community-based research. Kind of cradling in that is the participatory action research. And we do a lot of art-based research with our interventions and stuff. We're kind of psychologists and teachers, so we've got a lot of art therapy in our background, so that works with us. And this research is incremental, so it's not going to stop when I'm done my dissertation. It's work that we need to keep doing. So how are we going to do this? We have a team. I'm here on behalf of a community team. We've been thinking about this for 4 or 5 years. And most of us are semi-retired, 20, 25 years, police officers, social workers, teachers. And everybody's from Treaty 6, Treaty 10 area. We're kind of a mash of people that represent the different treaties there. So it's on the land healing that we're involved with. So it's a process that we've been doing already, but we haven't really been able to prove or track that we're doing something that's sustainable. So we sat down and they said, we need one of us to go get some skills here that will help us do some research with this. So the way that we're going to do this is to gather groups of vulnerable people, especially the youth. So we have a good sample of the people that are part of the research that really need the help. So from rural and remote areas, and we're thinking probably from mostly northern Saskatchewan, and do a healing intervention with them. And then the second part would be to ask these participants to share the impact of the intervention on their lived experience. So you can see it's not just doing a workshop and then saying, okay, how did that go? It's like kind of following them after and doing follow-up with them later to see, well, how was the transition back now that you feel healed, or if you feel better about yourself, what do you think you could use now to help you deal with going back into your group of peers? And then the last one is to engage others in assessment through a collective collaborative community process. So this is kind of an exciting model. It's kind of a warped picture. I was trying to get it off my phone onto my slide, but this is what we've got. A few artists on our team, and it's taken us a couple of months to try and capture what we're talking about, because it can get kind of fuzzy when we try and explain it, but it's kind of this wheel, but it's moving. So we wanted to kind of represent the cycles, the little circles. I know you can't really see inside there, but those are the different moons. So it's going through a calendar. So that's the year. So it's moving through time. Time is a factor, and it's definitely something that we need to consider with our work. And the fact that it's a ceremonial calendar means that there's events, because people are tired of talking about this issue, especially our vulnerable people, and they want action. They want to do something. So events are really important to plan. So we're talking right now about maybe having 4 camps and setting it up that way, where we have 4 events throughout the year that are on the ground, run by people in the communities, because we're seeing too many outsiders coming in trying to fix our problems, and then they leave, and then we're still sitting there, So this is an exciting part of the research that we've been involved with so far. So what do we expect to find? For sure, some momentum forward with the community healing process. That's one thing that we're excited about. It's not like we're going to have to wait until this research is done and then we can start doing something. We're actually going to be doing something, because we're in crisis right now. So it will engage stakeholders in dynamic incremental youth training. So we're going to be building on this. And it's a living framework and a model for future use. The output document that summarizes the research for knowledge mobilization, in other words, policy. We need to do something between education and health, because we're in limbo right now. It's a hot potato. You guys, health is saying the teachers are looking after that, and the teachers are saying, well, we'll refer you to mental health. It's not really us. So, and the kids are kind of going, well, where do I go? So really hoping to get some policy to recognize our work. We have a young man on our team that's a documentary. He does documentaries with videos, so we're excited about having him come follow some of our research. And then the last thing is the book. So, and that's about it.
Thank you, Marie. Quick questions?
Hi, I'm Marianne Neal. I'm working with 5 small communities in the Northwest Territories in the Sahtu region. And we're doing a lot of the on-the-land healing practices. I just thought you might like to look into that a little bit, and maybe I can send you that information. We're looking at building leadership capacity. We have many of the same problems in the Sahtu that you've identified in Northern Saskatchewan. Mm-hmm. And but in order to sort of overcome some of those challenges that you identified, we're looking at rebuilding their pride, bringing their pride in their heritage, and building leadership capacity, improving learning outcomes. So it's a collaboration with education, health, police officers, and so on. So anyway, I'm happy to share that information. Have you looked at that? The Sahtu, the Dashinta? Dashinta
No.
on the land. There's Dashinta in the Yellowknife and the Sahtu healing on the land healing. So I can show that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Marie. Really great presentation. I love the way you developed the ideas since last year. You say you want to develop a framework and a model, and I think that's great. My question is to you as a researcher. I mean, as a counselor, I can see enormous value in this process that you're putting in place. As a researcher, you also need to sort of sort out from that what works and what doesn't work so that you can generate lessons that can be applied again in that place or in other places. How do you propose to do that? How will you assess and analyze the pieces that work and the pieces that don't in order to make it, to be able to improve it going forward?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think that's why the collaborative community component is important. And we talked about that. Like, do I just sit there and look at all this data now and figure out what I'm going to do with it? But again, we're saying that's where our community needs to be involved. It shouldn't be just left up to me to say, yeah, that works. Because I could go down and Joe Blow down the street is saying, well, no, it doesn't. You know, why are you, and especially the kids, you know, why aren't we asking the kids, you know? There was one really powerful session that we had done with youth, and we had a session after, and we said, what do you guys think you need now? And one kid said, well, he stood up and he said, I can see what you're saying with the work up north. He said, we need leadership skill. Because now we know how it's helping us to change, but we don't have the confidence and the self-esteem to go back into our community now and meet with our leaders. So can you teach us something about that? And I said, well, why is that in the first place? And he said, because nobody ever asks us. They just sit there and maybe have a few token kids on their councils, but they just have us there so they can check the box off for grant applications. Or, you know, the kids aren't stupid, you know, they know what's going on. But really, how are we involving our youth? So I think to answer your question, we're really going to have the community looking and being involved with the assessment of the feedback from the direct participants. So it's kind of like it's a filter in a cup where the kids are going to have the first say, or the participants are having the first say to say, well, this is what works, this is what we think needs some more work, and then having the community in like a sharing circle, kind of a way to do that and have that documented. And then, you know, not saying you're right and you're wrong. We talked about that in our class yesterday. You know, how is that process going to look? And I think it's going to take a little bit of sorting out. But as a researcher, I need to just keep reminding myself I'm not looking for direct answers. I need to be open to just say, well, you know what, this is what happened and this is what our community is saying. And that feedback's going to be the rich flavor. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.